Well, howdy folks, it's Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician here, making a video for you out of Boise, Idaho, and I'm giving you yet another update on our 57 Ford that we got into. Now, I'll tell you from a professional standpoint, this has become one of those jobs where you're just like putting your hand to your forehead, you're like, this thing has turned into a nightmare, okay? So let's go back to square one and just real quick, let me show you this paint job, all right? There's a glimpse at this paint job, and that is why everything is absolutely covered up on this rig, 100%. Nothing is exposed. I try to keep it as unexposed as I can. I was not prepared to keep this rig as long as I thought. So, in the beginning we thought, we're just going to be dealing with a water pump. So going back to square one on it, on the water pump, the owner drives it in, and, it is making this, pretty god-awful grinding noise, which if you've ever driven an old Ford or Chevy and you got that water pump, you know that it can sound like a bearing has gone out. That's because the bearings do go out on them, so it'll grind and make all kinds of noise. So, right off the bat, you think, oh, yeah, that's definitely a water pump. Well, if you look how this is set up, you can't really see down in there anyways. And then when you get the electronic fans in there, or even if there was a normal fan in there with a fan shroud in there, you really can't see down in there anyway. So I get down in there and I start removing things. Now, one of the things I want to point out when I remove stuff, okay, is, and I've done this for you to kind of give you an idea of a bolt hole, okay? So, I'm pulling things apart, like, for example, this power steering bracket, right? I pull this power steering bracket off, okay, and I get down over here to the alternator bracket and other parts, and as I'm taking nuts and bolts out, bolt holes are not flush. All right, does that make sense to you? So if I take this bolt out, this bracket and everything is going to shift just ever so slightly, so that I've got to kind of wiggle everything back into place. There's nothing flush when it comes to any of these brackets, and it comes to bolts and stuff. It's like somebody, whoever put it all together, just kind of, forced things together. So, yeah, when I take a bolt out, or when you take a bolt out of a bracket, right, you should be able to put that bolt right back in without any issues whatsoever. But on this rig, when you remove a bolt, those bolt holes are going to off-center ever so slightly, so that when you start putting it back together, you're going to have to manipulate everything back together, all right? Another problem that I ran into here was, and I kind of thought this was funny when I was taking it apart, but I went ahead and said, I'll cross that bridge when I get there, okay? This power steering belt, watch this. That is all the tension you can get on this power steering belt, all right? The next thing that I think is quite interesting is I don't like this power steering bracket. And if you ask me, I'm not so sure this is even the proper bracket for this setup, because watch what happens when I pull this belt. Do you see how much this bracket flexes? Look at that. All right, now this bracket is locked down, tightened down, installed the way it's supposed to be installed, but when you this bracket, okay? So bottom line is, with the way this bracket is, you can't have any tension on this belt, because look what happens when you put tension. One more time. It flexes. Okay, I don't like that necessarily. I don't think that's a good thing. And then again, on top of that, that's all the tension. This is pulled all the way back, and that's all the tension you can get on there. When you use the proper tool, if you watch my previous video, and I'll show you the belt tensioning tool that you need to use, you can't get the proper reading on this belt, on this tension here, okay? Then you go over here to the alternator. Now, the alternator looks good, right? Let me run this slowly over and see if you can see. Can you see that this alternator and its bracket, when installed properly, is off center just a hair? Can you see that right there? Okay, and so I can get the proper tension on this belt, but this belt is off center, all right? And then if you go to the other side over here, all right, there is a space between here on this bracket. There's a bolt hole right here, right? That was something I couldn't understand when I loosened the bracket for this alternator, is why there's just a free bolt hole right here. And you should, I believe, have a spacer in between this bracket and the AC bracket, and then have a bolt and a nut right there, all right? And so then again, without it, this bracket flexes the same as that bracket, all right? So then, again, getting down in here to the AC, I can get the AC to the proper tension, right? But another thing that I couldn't explain on the AC was on the front, it's got two mounting bolts, okay? And then let me see if I can get you in here. Do you see where my finger is right there? Right, where my finger is down right there, that's a mounting bolt hole. A, that bolt hole is not lined up, it's off center with the bracket back here. B, there's no bolt there. So the AC compressor is only held in by 2 bolts. So we're missing a bolt there. And I'm going to tell you something, to get that bolt in that bracket, that's not fun. That's not fun at all. So the issue is, it looks good. When you stand back and you look at it, everything looks good. But the problem is with the mileage that I'm being told this vehicle has been driven, right? This should not have happened. What would have caused this to happen? Well, my theory is this. Brackets and parts and belts and all that are not aligned properly, okay? And so when on this old school stuff, or when you have something that has multiple belts on it like that, when it's not aligned properly, right, you actually have something being pulled to one side or the other too much. That's why it's so important to make sure that everything is perfectly aligned, and there are tools that you can use to do that with. Make sure the tension on the belts is all proper, all that other stuff, because what'll happen is if it's being pulled to one side or something's not aligned, this harmonic balancer is actually spinning like this, right? And all that extra vibration and whatnot is going to absolutely destroy that rubber in between, which is gone. That's another thing I noticed. It's just absolutely gone. And there you go, folks. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go in, I'm going to uninstall the alternator, the bracket, the AC compressor. I'm not going to disconnect it from the system. I'll just uninstall it, just, remove it from the engine, remove that bracket, get the water pump pulley off, get the power steering pump and that bracket off. I'm going to get everything off of here, and I'm going to put it all back together myself and determine from there if we have proper brackets and how do we get everything perfectly aligned so we don't have this issue ever again. So there you go, folks. That is the fun times that we've gotten into. And that's what we're going to get done, so I'll definitely give you some updates. Thanks for hanging out with me and checking out this video. If you guys have any questions about your projects, shoot them to us in the comments. If myself can't get to you, There's a bunch of cool members of this community now. They also, I've noticed, will answer questions. So just shoot them to us in the comments and somebody will help you out. Once again, I appreciate everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. This is Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician, signing off.